Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Building the DMV presented by Selective Hauling. I'm Jill Sorensen. Recently, I had a chance to sit down with Paul Choquette, who is the Executive Vice President of Gilbane Building Company. Now, Paul was recently promoted. He actually used to be the Senior Vice President of Gilbane Mid-Atlantic. Gilbane Mid-Atlantic, for those who don't know, is a huge region. It encompasses Charlotte, Raleigh, the DC Arlington office, as well as Richmond, Baltimore, and Philadelphia. So Paul was in charge of that entire region before he was, of course, promoted to Executive Vice President for Gilbane Building Company, which, as you know, is a national company based out of Rhode Island. So without further ado, let's take a look back at my conversation with Paul Choquette.
Thank you, Jill. Great idea. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. So, as you know, with our guests, I like to kind of get the history of how you got into construction. Your background is actually business and finance. So, how did you get into construction?
Well, it's kind of an easy answer because Gilbane's a family business. We're 150 years old, and I am actually a part of the family. So I'm a fifth generation family member. My father worked at Gilbane for 40 years, and at the end of it, he was the president and CEO, and he held those spots for 20 years. And so my childhood kind of included groundbreakings, going to the office. I spent my summers as a laborer across the New England area. So, I was kind of indoctrinated in it that way. On the other hand, we had a fairly formal program about entering the business as a family member, which was that you had to do something else for 3 years. And obviously, I don't have an engineering degree. I did that. I did some sports production, which we talked about. I've done, and then I went into business. And then ultimately, I did decide to join the family business. So it's a little bit of a finding my way on my own, but also having it around me for my whole life.
Yeah, that's awesome, and to have those other experiences are so important, and
Oh, yeah.
helps obviously all of us become well-rounded people. So what surprised you? Was there anything that surprised you about the industry when you entered, having come from those different backgrounds and having those other experiences?
Well, the biggest piece for me was that it was kind of obvious that I was working at a family business, even though it was a big family business. And so that idea of the history, the culture, the kind of camaraderie, I just actually felt like that was very palpable right away. There was just a lot of people who understood the mission, they understood our history, they knew the family, they loved everything about where they worked. I didn't experience that prior to coming to Gilbane, so it really was something that clicked with me from a cultural standpoint. And then you factor in the fact that construction is a pretty straight-talking, kind of black and white business. There's not a lot of, sort of pontification. People kind of get right to the point because they have projects to finish. Again, that clicked with me. So between the culture and camaraderie, along with the industry-specific kind of style, it felt like a good fit.
Absolutely. And I think in my, short experience in the industry, that camaraderie really speaks to kind of the broader picture of teamwork. And, you and I have previously talked about that sports entity, and it really is. Construction is the ultimate teamwork when you really think about it. How have you seen that sort of play out? I mean, for maybe some people who watch this and maybe they're sports fans, maybe they don't know a lot about the construction industry. How do you see that teamwork play out, even just on a small level, like on a project? How important is that?
So if you really look at, say, our 3,300 employees spread out all across the globe, really, every one of those is really a high-performing team. Well, we hope they're high-performing, but they're all teams. And so every one of those teams has goals and has a series of missions, and they get better along the way. We try to train them. We try to bring in good talent. We try to sort of provide them systems to work. But there is not one particular person that can make it all work. It has to be a team. So that whole idea of you would have never scored the touchdown if the left tackle didn't block for the quarterback, or and so that idea that you sort of go find all your teammates, and that is sort of what works really well in the construction industry. A lot of intricate parts all kind of working together, and it really has a very similar sort of mentality and asset. The other piece that's always there is that leadership piece. There is just a natural need for leaders to sort of step forward, and that our industry is filled with that, and it makes things really kind of dynamic out there.
Absolutely. So you got to the Mid-Atlantic region with Gilbane in 2010. What were some of your goals that you wanted to accomplish coming to this region?
So the first mission, and the reason they felt like they needed to sort of ask me to relocate, was that we were having issues with backlog. So my first thought was I needed to kind of figure out how to kind of, what are we doing wrong, or what aren't we doing that we could do to bring in more sustainable backlog. But in that process of that, it led to a kind of an assessment that we really did not have a great long-term strategy. And what I kind of came to realize is that what had worked for Gilbane Mid-Atlantic for the last 20 years was not necessarily going to work for the next 20 years. And so we had to sort of go through a fairly significant long-term strategic change in how we were going to approach who we are and what we're going to be for the next 20 years. And that led to a long dialogue with the people and my team and the folks that have been with us for a long time. They needed to buy into that because it was a fairly wholesale change. And so I spent a lot of time getting buy-in to that, but really getting people to understand that strategy was what we needed to do. And so it was kind of like one of those sort of take a dip to kind of get back on track. That was what I quickly realized I needed to deal with early, and it was exciting because it suddenly became very entrepreneurial, very much building architecture of a new organization and going out and doing it. But for many that had been there for the 20 years prior or something, that it was change, and change causes anxiety, causes people to wonder whether they fit in to the new regime. So I needed people to kind of listen and sort of understand, ask questions, and then get buy-in. So that was the first area of focus.
So when you look at that process, so the evolution, you start that process, sort of that entrepreneurial, as you described it, aspect. What did it take then to make sure that people were buying in, and how did that evolution come to fruition, do you think?
Well, the biggest thing you have to do is you have to sort of see, kind of at least have some data and back up to your beliefs that you're not just sort of winging it. And so, like the plus the DC metro area, which we were sort of not necessarily penetrating as far as we could, was tower cranes everywhere, right? Like, so that's an easy one to be like, look at all these tower cranes and none of them are ours. Like, you can start by that. But the really bigger thing was that the alternative approach of doing the same and trying to have them understand that isn't sustainable was the biggest thing. They kind of had to start to understand that. And when they did that, they started to kind of pivot to, how can I help? And frankly, we had to go through a process of accepting a longer term strategy has, not immediate results. You're not going to immediately win new work with clients that you haven't been calling on. You're not going to immediately, show immediate growth. You're not always going to be able to say that everybody on the team is the right fit for this new strategy. So you have to bring in new talent. You have to reshape or repurpose different resources. So that process basically was, we sort of shaped ourselves to the strategy, brought in a lot of new talent, and then went out into the market and started having these conversations. And that just immediately kind of led to a whole new set of data and feedback on how our approach might work. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. When you started going out there, then what were some of the challenges that you felt like you were facing when you were talking to other people?
Yeah, so we just simply had a brand issue a little bit. I mean, we were actually, for a lot of the reasons you want a good brand, you know, you know, comes across as high integrity, high ethics, quality, family business. People got a lot of that part, which is actually
Mm-hmm.
harder to create if you have an issue there. But they also saw us as not necessarily a downtown private sector urban at-risk builder.
Sure.
And that wasn't everywhere. I mean, we were much more established in different parts of Mid-Atlantic, but in the DC metro area where we have, huge growth potential, that was a common theme that we were just saying, we haven't seen you in that space, or we don't think you can do that, or we're not sure you can do that. And so we had to sort of hit that process of explaining our capabilities, explaining our team and our new dynamic strategy. And frankly, I had some folks that just said, so this is a new strategy. I said, yes, it is. And so that was the beginning of when, okay, that's chapter one of a long book, but the idea is they started to understand that this is a pivot. We weren't
Mm-hmm.
trying to pretend that this was something, the same Gilbane coming to your door. It helps that I moved down there, like there's new faces. So the idea was to get out into the market, explain that strategy, and then you can actually start really getting into how could that strategy be of value to you. To do that, that's time.
Yeah.
So we had to bring people in that understood that they were going to, as I've said before, like doors are going to get closed. You may not get a phone call back. You can't understand it. You maybe had a 20-year relationship with somebody in your previous life, but it's not going to be as easy now.
Sure.
And fast forward, we're way at the end of that now. But that was where it was in the beginning.
Yeah, and it's awesome to kind of hear those struggles and seeing now how you guys have overcome that. When you look at that evolution now in the last 10 years, can you pinpoint some projects or maybe even just types of projects that really helped you turn that corner?
Yeah, I was. This was actually a fun exercise to think about what those were, because we did have some then that really were sort of beginnings of things. One was, we won this large interiors project through the GSA, but originally it was with Vornado for Fish and Wildlife, and it was an incredibly fast track, pretty high volume interiors project in a fairly commercial space over here in Arlington. And it was just a very signature kind of project for us to show credibility. We delivered. It was interiors, which is an area that we were focused on. And that kind of put us immediately, I call that a move the needle project. It moved the needle in people's view of us and our capabilities in that private space. We won a signature project with a joint venture partner, Smoot, for Dunbar High School, which was this very, very high-profile high school in the city. It was very complicated. And that basically established and sort of affirmed a relationship with the Department of General Services for the city that has been a tremendous relationship that goes many years now. And so I look at that project as sort of kind of solidifying and building that. We did a really, really high-end confidential client, some other time we could talk about it, you'd figure out who it was, but it was a really planned $35-40 million interior corporate renovation project that sort of began a process of us seeing interiors going from just this sort of fit out of corporate interiors to modernization, repositioning. That project kind of, again, launched our credibility there. A couple other ones that I like. I love Cole Fieldhouse we did at University of Maryland.
Oh, yeah.
Legendary building for a lot of people, turned it into a football field, practice facility, and then adjacent to it, we built the football offices, and now we're finishing the science wing. So the sports and science convergence. I've never had a project where we've had that in one building.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Many, many people go to not as many as we should, but a lot of people go to the football games, and that was a high visibility job for us. And the last one that kind of, or kind of, speaks to the diversity we try to promote is, we renovated Raven Stadium in Baltimore for years, modernized it. We built the Wizards practice facility. We've had this sort of gaming, entertainment, sports sort of convergence that I think is an area that we've become pretty good at, and we actually see that as an area, especially with some of the focus here in DC around that. But just the way that whole world of sports and entertainment and gaming and e-gaming and sports books is all kind of coming together. We've actually built a deep bench there, and we're pretty proud of that.
Yeah, that is awesome, and I think most people can drive by, any of those facilities when they're being constructed, and obviously see your signs. And I think from a construction perspective, when you see the communities around those venues sort of be revived because of that built environment, that's something really cool to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, we're you know, we preach it and our clients expect it, but our projects are economic engines in themselves. I mean, whether it's 150 million to 80 million, whether it's 2 years or 18 months, that moment in time that's a little business. And so if you think about where you get your catering from, where your team gets their pizza delivered or barbecue,
Yep.
To what residents that we can help get in the fence and figure out how to add value to a project that means something to their community. And then the businesses that we can sort of focus our spend on, whether it's private sector or public sector or mandated by contract or not, we have a strategy on every project to sort of make a difference. Just because, and we'll talk about it later, this pipeline of talent, the more we can sort of foster that, the more sustainable our industry is, and we can continue to meet the demands of our clients, which is only increasing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned in the beginning how large the Mid-Atlantic region is for Gilbane. So with, you've got Charlotte and Raleigh in North Carolina, and then all the cities I mentioned with Richmond and Arlington, D.C., Philly, and Baltimore. Does each area operate separately, or do you see sort of the cross workflow, sharing of ideas? Does that help you guys in this region?
Well, look, anybody that's grown up around here, if you were to say that Philadelphia is just like D.C. and Charlotte's just like Baltimore, people would be like, that's not really the case, right? So, just Baltimore and D.C., right?
Right.
Totally different animal. What high schools you go to, all those kind of stories. So that plays out completely in the economic engine of those cities. You cannot sort of dictate that, one size fits all. So that's why we do produce full service business units in those marketplaces. We have vice presidents that run the office. We have full estimating and pre-con. We have full project executives, superintendents. Everything that market needs, they have full service. Go down to Baltimore, same thing. Go down to DC. But we are a division, and we try to connect ourselves by having a shared, efficient deployment of resources that makes sense. But the most important thing that I think speaks to us operating as a division is the fact that we kind of all are incented on one goal, which is the Mid-Atlantic goal. So whether it's bonuses, sales, anything we do to sort of create incentives for our people, they are connected to a Mid-Atlantic divisional goal versus their own individual business unit goal. And when you do that, what you'll find is staffing is not a complicated discussion. Specialists that are experts in certain areas, and we have plenty of those people that travel up and down because they're so good at what they do.
Sure.
That type of discussion is seamless. And so my job, one of my jobs, is to kind of police that and make sure that I like to make sure our business units have really sound business plans that are growing their people and have sustainable growth. And then I have to kind of make sure that the divisional resources are evenly allocated so that we're growing as a whole. And so, every once in a while we will get into some territorial battles and some really good talent may be fought over. And I sometimes referee that. It's always for the good of the division, right? It's always sort of, this makes sense right now. And we generally don't have that often, but it definitely happens. So that's kind of how we work. It's sort of, I hate to say it, there's an accounting feature here that's kind of meant to be efficient. So we don't have 12 people when we only need 6. If we really think about all the divisions, all the business units, we can sort of have people support multiple business units. So
sure,
it's a way to grow with an identity in each business unit, but also leverage all of us together.
Absolutely. It goes back to the team. You've got individual entities, but it's still one team, which is cool. Right. So, all right, so we talked about sort of the beginning of, your time here and the evolution in the Mid-Atlantic region. So now, looking a little bit to the future with Gilbane Mid-Atlantic, what areas do you want to see you guys expand and grow now?
Yeah, so, there's sort of this, part of it is there's a new market reality, but also, so I'll give you my first, which would be kind of a pre-COVID conversation, which is what we were thinking about anyway. And one of them was definitely design build. We're doing a lot of design build. We've gotten good at it. We're investing more in it. And so, and I think we're seeing different sectors start to consider it. So design build is an area that we have real interest in trying to explore and go further with it, because it naturally sets up an integrated team, which is what we all really want. And it also allows there to be some real partnerships and relationships with the design professionals, that we can kind of walk in each other's shoes a little bit and kind of build a better team dynamic. Again, back to the team piece. The other area is some of these alternative delivery models, so the public-private partnerships. We are in on that. We're good at it in the sense that we've been focused on it for a while, and we're now starting to see it. And then you do, like I mentioned, the economic realities are now here, where public-private partnerships might be something that is being utilized. So we see that as an area. And then really this modernization, in the end, we're a technical builder. We get in with clients. We're very disciplined about not sort of taking on more than our resources allow, so that we don't, somehow compromise a client relationship. But repositioning, modernization, that work is sort of all around us, and we're very good at it. We're building more of that. So I think we're going to continue to invest in that. Kind of alternative delivery models, design build, and then the last one, which is really maybe to a forward question you might ask, life sciences is an area that is just kind of exploding. And again, aligns really well with our strengths, our technical folks, and it covers a lot of the states in the Mid-Atlantic. There's not an area in our area that doesn't have some version of life sciences percolating, and it appears to be a very long runway. So we are already invested in that, and we'll continue to.
Yeah, and we will talk about that here in a minute too.
Yeah,
so I know that we talked about some of the key projects that have helped this evolution, the rebranding that started 10 years ago. Right. Are there some other projects most recently that you guys are particularly proud of?
Yeah, I mean, we did this. We're doing this LaMotta headquarters project right now. It's down in the kind of Federal Triangle space. Jair Lynch is the developer or manager of it for LaMotta, and it's just an exciting project. It's got design build. It's got repositioning and a really high end sort of modernization of a fairly tired building. So kind of checks a lot of boxes. Kind of relationship forming, diversity of the project scope, and what it could mean to us showcasing some of our talent. We're really proud of all the work we've been doing at Howard University. We've been working there for the last almost 6 years, and it's just been, I've never felt more connected to what their mission is. And so where they're talking about things that would be transformative for that campus and their future, we're sort of right away getting a wind of that, and we can offer up how we can help. So the relationship has been strong. It's very trusted, and we want to help them as much as we can. But that relationship has been consistent and one that I think we all feel very proud of, because what the work we're doing is sort of reshaping that campus for the future. And then, the only one I'll talk about that's sort of outside of the, DC metro area, we are finishing this, really signature project up in Philadelphia, in South Philly, right near the ballpark. It's a casino. It's for Cordish companies, and it's just a tremendous asset for that South Philadelphia area. It speaks to the entertainment district model. It speaks to kind of everything that's going on with sports and entertainment. It's been a really, really fast, really aggressive schedule. We got hit, we fought through it with COVID. And we're just really proud of that and really enjoy that client relationship and excited to see that thing turn over and open in the beginning of 21.
Awesome. So are there any projects on the horizon that you can talk about that you're looking forward to?
Without having gone through the due diligence of throwing out, different jobs, I get nervous about that without, some. But yes, we have a lot of design build work where we just want a major P3 in Prince George's County, which is public information. It's a K through 12 program, but it's all design build. It's very fast, and it's in that sort of alternative delivery model space. So we're really excited to see that. It'll be the very first K through 12 public-private partnership job done in the U.S. And so we're excited to be a part of that. We have a similar P3 up in Philadelphia with 30th Street Station. All these are in the pre-closing stage, but they're sort of dynamic projects that really are perhaps a glimpse into the future. We're really excited about some of the work we're doing in the life sciences space. We just simply saw it coming a little bit and had some great pedigree in it, and so it just simply took off. So between Raleigh, down to Charlotte, down to Richmond. We're in Maryland, the 270 cluster, and then downtown Philadelphia, where it's always been a huge hub for eds and meds. We're finding really, really sophisticated commercial developers building life sciences space right in the city, and so I find that to be exciting because, like for example, we just simply were associated with a client that just produced the clinical trials for Moderna, and so the lab space where they were trying out those trials was something that we built. So you start to feel really good about what we're working with, as well as the fact that it appears to be a deep market sector for a while.
Yeah, and that, it's kind of a nice segue into my next question, which we did discuss a little bit, regarding kind of the sports venues, but Gilbane's involvement in the community and, how important is that to you guys as a company, and how do you manage to make sure that you're involved in each community across all of your cities that the Mid-Atlantic encompasses?
Yeah, it's, I'll say this, it's core to our company. So we want to be active in our communities everywhere we are, but it's kind of like that sort of perfect practice. We still could do more. The one area that we try as a division to be consistent in is in, trying to have a mentoring engagement program. So whether we utilize an ACE mentor program, which we're very active in, or we adopt a high school, or we bring in kind of partners that have corporate work study programs, our number one sort of even across all the business units goal is to try to help at-risk youth gain opportunity, whether it's in our industry or just simply gain opportunity. And so we're active in that consistently. But then you get down to some relationships that our offices have had in the community that go back 25 years. We've been doing handicap ramps in Richmond. We do a restaurant walk down there, all the way down in Blacksburg. We do a kind of a blues festival that basically raises money for a local hospital. And so, we're trying to maybe take it to another level and maybe actually track the hours a little bit and try to incent our employees to feel like we kind of expect you to get out in the community and do more. And so,
awesome.
21, we'll probably do a kind of a community week, if you will, where we really try to all do something that week. And the last piece that I'll just put a plug in, because it's something that we're really proud of, is that we got a lot of value when we stood up our employee resource groups. Mm-hmm. So we have these employee resource groups across the company. I'm just going to make sure I don't, miss it, but it's basically our women, Gilbane young professionals, Black and African American, Hispanic, LGBTQ, our veterans. All these folks kind of have sort of created these sort of ERGs that all have a very focused area on community service. So they've kind of come to us with things that they want to do, and we collaborate a lot now. There's a lot of cross collaboration with the different groups, but they've driven a lot of our community engagement That's just passions for that group. And frankly, as a leader, it's kind of a bottom up approach to community service, and that's been really rewarding because that's how it should be.
That is awesome. That is definitely one thing I've noticed that's really obvious in the construction industry is just I think everyone takes a real look at how they can be involved in the community, and that it's awesome to see so many different ways that you guys are doing that. That is really cool.
Yeah. Like I said, though, it's sort of a dream that just needs to be continuously worked on.
All right, so let's kind of switch gears and look at the market. And
Sure.
Obviously, in the short term, we've been dealing with this pandemic. What have you seen? What has been the effect of the, I guess, COVID just in the last 9 months or so, past year? And have you seen those different cities that you're involved in experience different effects?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a weird time in mid-March through April where it was really about fear and uncertainty.
Yeah.
Health. We all had those calls with employees that were wondering whether if they left their house and went to work, they were going to come back with a killing virus, right? It was that kind of scale. So productivity took a hit. There was a ton of uncertainty, and thankfully, only one of our markets really was shut down, and it was only for a short period of time. So we were obligated to stay open and continue to push. And so I always like to say that our team, their efforts, their kind of resilient nature, is that they relooked at everything we do, whether it's obviously with the PPE, it's staggered starts, it's how we kind of space the job out, it's how we do tool, safety, stretch, and flex. All of it was studied. And I always like to say, and I'm very proud of our team for doing this, we kind of created the new normal. Everybody talks about the new normal. I like to think that in that stage, we literally went to work on creating it, and they did. And we reached it, and work kind of got back to productivity levels. And then at the end of it, you're left with what's the economic reality of all this. And that's kind of where we are right now, in addition to an uptick in COVID in the winter here. But our sort of philosophy now is, don't get complacent. We have to continue to work productively in this environment, in an uptick. We can't have any more shutdowns. It's not good for, and I mean from a construction standpoint, we have to ensure that our projects continue to get built. And then we look at what are we dealing with. And so it looks like, our perspective is, it's going to be kind of slow going into 21. I mean, there's just still this, whether it's uncertainty or people are like, let's just punt until the vaccine comes out. I think a lot of jobs are going to stay on the shelf that were being talked about pre-COVID. Obviously, we talked about sectors that are kicking off from COVID or life after COVID. But in the meantime, key institutions are struggling, but they won't struggle forever. The basis for a higher ed project that was drawn up before COVID, probably has a lot of merit to it still, to that university. They just aren't really there yet. Their priorities had to totally shift. I'd see by the summer of 21, those projects come back off the shelf. Those conversations start again. It may start with designers, it may start with planners, it may start with builders, just doing some conceptual estimating. But the activity level by the summer of 21 will get back on things that projects that were viable before we had to go through this vicious global pandemic that just put everything on pause. So therefore, I think 22, we're back towards talking about growth. But the news almost essentially will be from March to June of this sort of weird, uncertain time. That's a major dip, and we're all dealing with that.
Absolutely. When you look at sort of the long term, and we touched on it with the life sciences, earlier in our conversation, but long term, this is a two-part question, but I'm going to ask them both at once because I believe they're related. So what factors do you think is going to help or are going to help the construction industry remain strong? But also, are there certain market sectors that you see as being key to the success of the construction industry?
Sure. Obviously, when I think about that question, I have to put a plug in for workforce development.
Yeah.
We continue to have a pipeline issue with out in the trades. You know that better than anybody right now. And so the idea of us sort of collaborating more and working with our municipalities or government folks that have the same goals, I'll say it to the day I die. Construction is a great job. It's good work, especially in the Mid-Atlantic. You get paid well. The job sites might be right in your backyard. So we need to find a way to draw people more into our industry. And I think we can do that better if we collaborate more than have each of us take that on ourselves. So workforce development is something that will help us for perpetuity in all areas, but that's one I wanted to put a plug in.
Yeah.
What I see that's interesting to me is what could come out of an infrastructure bill. Where does renewables fit in? You can read a lot about these things and understand that there is a significant economic engine around renewables. There's certainly a sense that an infrastructure bill has a chance to happen in 21. And how broad is that? How do they determine what is infrastructure? So there's an area there that might yield some really exciting work that might kind of get started maybe earlier, but also has a long-term impact. If our infrastructure is being invested in, that enables so much work. I can speak for our developers that speak of infrastructure weakness as being an area that makes a particular project not viable. And so as we sort of invest in that, I think you'll see other economic development take off around that. But and then this alternative delivery. I mean, I think this idea of private public, has kind of gone from a threat to a real creative and viable way to get work happening. This privatization, it sounds, in some areas it sounds bad, like a lot of bad words used around the prison side of things. But if you really think about life cycle and creative ways to get projects going, there's a lot of collaboration that can happen between public and private. I'm really interested in that, seeing if that kind of becomes something that through this gets launched a little earlier and matures a little bit during this downturn.
Yeah, and it's
that question.
No, that's something we hear a ton about now. I mean, I would say even from 5 years ago, that this is the public-private partnerships are something that is in everyone's everyday conversations, at least in this industry.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on today. I think, you offered everyone just some great insights into not only your company, but also the industry as a whole. And it really offers our audience just an awesome look into what's ahead and what we can look forward to. And thank you for plugging the trades and the construction industry. That's just something I'm really passionate about, and I completely agree with you. It's an awesome career, and I think that we need to get the word out a little bit more about that.
Yeah, no doubt. I love it. It was great.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Paul, and thank you everyone for watching this episode of Building the DMV. I will see you next time.
You got it. Thanks, Jill.